I cracked Amazon SG2 interview after 3 tries. Yes, you heard that right. It took me 4 attempts to land an SG2 role at Amazon. But hey, persistence pays off. In this video, I will share 2 biggest mistakes I kept making in those interviews and how I finally aced it in my 4th try. The Amazon SG2 interview process typically involves an online assessment followed by 4 on-site interview rounds. Out of these, 1 will be focused on system design. While I can't share specific questions due to an NDA, but I can highlight key topics to study. Interestingly, I never applied to Amazon directly. Recruiters reached out to me. This might be because I interned at Amazon in the past and they kept my information on the file. Most major tech companies, often referred to as FANG or MANG, have a cooling period. This means that if you fail an interview after reaching the on-site stage, you can't reapply for a year. So if you are aiming for a job at these companies, ensure you are fully prepared before starting the interview process. When Amazon's recruiter contacted me, I asked for 1 to 2 months to prepare. And they've agreed without any hesitation. So if you're approached by a recruiter, don't hesitate to request for additional time to get ready. It's better to take your time than to rush into it unprepared. Now, without any delay, let's jump into interview experience. Most online assessments feature similar type of questions, typically centered around arrays, strings with a heavy reliance on sorting. I used Java to tackle these assessments, and I found that collections played a crucial role in solving these problems. After taking several online assessments, I realized that questions might look daunting, but once you understand what they're asking, solving them becomes much easier. A significant portion of the time is spent just understanding the question itself. Here's what worked for me. After a quick read through the question, I would jump straight to provided examples. If those gave me good understanding, I would start coding. If not, I would spend more time understanding the problem itself. Once you submit your answers, you are usually asked to describe your approach and discuss the space and time complexity of your solution. Once it's done, there are usually some behavioral questions to answer, typically in a strongly agree to strongly disagree format. I'm not exactly sure how these behavioral type of questions are used in the assessment, but they seem to be part of the process. In on-site interviews, each round is an hour long, typically with 15 minutes for behavioral questions and 40 minutes for coding and 5 minutes for open discussion. I like to complete all the interviews in single day, so I scheduled all the 4 rounds back to back with 15 minutes break in between 4 rounds. These 4 rounds generally include 3 coding interviews and then 1 system design, focusing on data structures, algorithms, high-level design and low-level design. The coding problems usually have medium complexity and involve topics like sorting, BFS DFS, binary search, hashing, and sliding windows. Even though these problems were presented as a real-world scenarios, the solutions were often similar to those you find on LeetCode. Rather than just practicing endless LeetCode questions, I suggest focusing on coding patterns, which I found more helpful in cracking these coding rounds. I even made a video on preparing for and cracking interviews in 12 weeks. Check this video out, and if you're aiming for top tech companies. When given a problem during an interview, take the time to understand it thoroughly before jumping into the code. Ask follow-up questions if needed. I often started with a brute force approach to outline the basic solution and discussed its time and space complexity. I always wrote my code in the production-oriented style, using multiple functions when appropriate. After completing the code, I ran through a simulation with an example and discussed edge cases. I've wrapped up by explaining the space and time complexity. This method worked well for me, and I recommend it to others preparing for on-site interviews. I haven't failed any coding rounds so far, but let's talk about what went wrong in my interviews. I haven't prepared well for the behavioral rounds in the first 3 interviews. I did not spend enough time crafting perfect answers. Before my 4th interview, I took nearly a week to prepare responses to common behavioral questions. I use STAR format. That's nothing but situation, task, action, and result. As you progress to more senior roles, behavioral questions carry more weightage because they reflect your real-world experience and how you handle challenges. Examples of these questions include, tell me about a time how you handled a conflict with your teammate. Or, have you ever received critical feedback and how did you respond? I created a cheat sheet with behavioral questions and answers. Let me know in the comments if you would like to access it. Another major mistake I made was not fully understanding what interviewers were looking for in the system design round. These questions are often open-ended, like design Instagram timeline or design a messaging app. It's unrealistic to design a complete system in 45 minutes. But interviewers expect you to guide the discussion and lead the process. In my failed rounds, I rushed through without a clear format. For my fourth interview, I used a structured approach to tackle the system design rounds. Here's the process I followed. First, discuss business and user requirements, and then list out the constraints and your assumptions. So before diving into HLD, I asked interviewer what specific parts of HLD they were interested in. After explaining the components in depth, that's nothing but the low-level design, I checked for single point of failures and also discussed improvements with caching, sharding, etc. I also explored how to scale the system while improving the latency. I also considered how to make the system idempotent and how to choose the right type of database. If you are preparing for system design interviews, I recommend two resources: educated.io, Grokking the System Design, and the System Design Primer on GitHub. These two resources helped me to ace the system design rounds. And make sure to take a lot of mock interviews, which will boost your confidence. Overall, this helped me to structure my approach and ultimately succeed in my fourth interview. So on my fourth attempt, all my Amazon interview rounds went incredibly well. I didn't even have a hint of doubt after any of the sessions. I felt very confident and the feedback would be positive, and it was positive. When the offer finally came through, I was thrilled and knew that the effort and the patience had paid off. Here's a tip for anyone on a similar journey. Don't lose hope, keep practicing, work hard and stay consistent. Consistency and the persistence are the key to success. All the very best.